ultimately it ought to lead to more bipartisanship, because by definition the House is more bipartisan, regardless of how some of those, either both or one of those recounts play out. It is now a more bipartisan place because Democrats picked up some votes. But as we all know, leadership makes a difference. And it's going to take some time for them to organize. If there is a change in speaker, it's going to take some time for the House side to organize after we get started. And we'll just have to see how all that plays out. On the Senate side, the Senate is already more bipartisan, using that as a relative term, I suppose, because of the 2/3 rule. As long as there were the bare minimum number of Democrats to allow the 2/3 rule to have meaning, at least in a purely partisan sense, it was already a more bipartisan play. For those of y'all that aren't familiar with the 2/3 rule, in a nutshell, what that is bills are filed in order. And in fact, I was told on the way over here that already 184 bills have been filed this morning in terms of pre-filing, which is a lot by 10 o'clock in the morning. But the point being that they're filed in order, and the rules require that they be brought up in order. But there's always a blocker bill, meaning that if you tried to bring them up in order, you'd have some difficulty because that first bill would have to come up before any other bill, including the budget, could come up, unless the rules are suspended. And the rules can only be suspended on a vote of 2/3 of the members. So what happens in the Senate, and it happens on every bill, and it's a real serious thing, and that is that you are in a situation where you need to have 2/3 prepared to vote to bring up whatever bill it is. Well, that naturally creates some consensus in the Senate. And we tend to talk in politics about the partisan alignment, Democrats versus Republicans, and how many Democrats are there, and do they have just the bare minimum to block a bill. But the truth of the matter is, it becomes the 2/3 rule becomes a very bipartisan thing because you're building coalitions with Republicans, and Republicans are building with Democrats to get to that 2/3. It just by nature has to happen. I do think that the fact that there has been one Democrat that won in a race that was held by a Republican incumbent up in Fort Worth. Wendy Davis is now Senator-elect, having won that Tarrant County race against Senator Brimer. That moves the Democrats automatically to 12 of the 31 members. And that's another thing people need to keep in mind. The Senate's a relatively small place. And so there is a sense of camaraderie that plays out there that's different across party lines. In fact, I can stand here and honestly say to you that, in my view, there aren't that many senators, maybe 2 or 3 that I feel like maybe even think about partisanship right off the bat. It just doesn't happen the same way. But I think it is important that the Democrats picked up that seat. And of course, there's a special election, and that the date hadn't been called for when that special runoff will occur between Chris Bell and Joan Huffman down in the West U, Galveston, over to Jefferson County district down there. But that could also play a role because if the Democrat wins that, then you have 13 Democrats. Now, the point of me getting into all that is that I do think that what it does is it creates it changes it makes it more bipartisan, frankly, because then the Democrats are in even more of a situation to be able to utilize some leverage. And I think that also, the fact that the House is more bipartisan also should make the Senate a little more bipartisan, because again, there's leverage by virtue of them having to play nice with regard to what we may be doing in the Senate. So I think what that does is it creates a little bit more leverage on some issues, but you're going to still see bipartisanship, I think, in the Senate. Not only see it, I think it will be more pronounced.